Well, good evening, and thank you so much to those of you who have joined us tonight for the third in our virtual speaker series this year. My name is Myrna Maloney Flynn, and I am the president of Massachusetts Citizens for Life. And before we get started with tonight's event, just want to make one quick comment about the video you just saw. Our event, the gala, our 50th anniversary gala, is fast approaching on October 14th. It's just under 4 weeks away. So if you have not secured your ticket, I encourage you after tonight's webinar to go to our website, reserve your seat. We are quickly running to capacity in the ballroom at the Newton Marriott. So get your ticket while tickets still exist. And with that, I'd like to start tonight's conversation with a wonderful pro-life advocate, a hero, one of our great legal allies in our fight to protect the unborn and fight for the right to life across the country. And I guess one note about how we came to welcome attorney James Bopp tonight. There were some conversations that had started really within our membership earlier this year regarding the best ways to advocate for the unborn, particularly via legislation, and what kinds of legislation would be most effective, most impactful. And there are, as we know in our movement, several different beliefs in terms of the best ways to advocate for the unborn, the best ways to go about saving as many lives as we possibly can. And so we discussed internally with our board who might be the best person to welcome in order to talk more about the best strategies to utilize at this time, the best laws to prioritize in order that we might save lives and really reach our potential as a movement. Again, at this point in history, we are post-Dobbs, we are in a post-Roe world, but what does that mean for our movement? We've seen wins and losses since June of 2022. So with that, I am so thrilled to welcome attorney James Bopp with us tonight. It's a privilege. And if you have not heard Jim speak before, you're in for a treat. He, as I said, is one of today's best legal allies. And he will talk with us about the best ways that he has seen to advocate for the unborn. Now, Jim is renowned really for his expertise in biomedical issues, including abortion and the rights of the unborn, with a remarkable track record of successes in the U.S. Supreme Court and a deep involvement in campaign finance, First Amendment law, and medical ethics. Jim brings unparalleled insights to our event this evening. Jim is willing to take questions via the chat following his presentation. So please, I ask that you hold your questions until the end, and then at that point, welcome you to pose questions and comments to Jim. Jim, welcome and thank you so much. And the floor is all yours.
Thank you very much, Myrna, for that very generous introduction. And of course, I'm very pleased to talk to and try to help my friends in Massachusetts as I do all over the United States. 51 years ago, I was a senior law student at the University of Florida Law School. And I was driving home at noon for my lunch to my apartment. And of course, the news came on, and the news came on that the Supreme Court had established abortion on demand throughout pregnancy in the United States. Here we are 51 years later, and almost, and we are celebrating the overturning of Roe v. Wade, which has returned the question of protecting the unborn to the people of the United States. And of course, that was a glorious victory. In 1978, I became general counsel for the National Right to Life Committee, and still am general counsel. And one of my responsibilities, probably premier responsibility, was to chart a course on how we could overturn Roe v. Wade. I delved into that, saw the NAACPs, and studied their strategy to overturn Plessy versus Ferguson, which succeeded in Brown versus Board of Education, and saw that overturning precedent really proceeded on a certain path, which is called the incremental strategy. And then it was my responsibility to implement that, and it did result ultimately in Roe v. Wade being overturned in Dobbs. Well, a lot has changed since 1973, before before Roe v. Wade, and we face challenges now that are much greater than the challenges we actually faced 50 years ago. For 50 years, we have been wanting to return to the pre-Roe era, where we had criminal abortion laws that protected the unborn and allowed abortion only to save the life of the mother. Because that was our conception for many of these years, we saw a number of states support trigger laws, where their prior Roe law would be triggered to go into effect, reimposing criminal penalties except to save the life of the mother. And some 20 states had such laws. And so when Dobbs' decision was overturned, very quickly, all those laws went into effect in about 20 states. Now, those states had 300,000 abortions a year during Roe v. Wade. And now we were limiting abortion through criminal laws to only life of the mother. Well, I want you to know that very recently there was a study done about the effect of those laws, criminal abortion laws, life of the mother only, in terms of limiting these 300,000 abortions that had previously occurred. And what they found by studying every aspect of this is that those laws in those 20 states have only eliminated 24,000 of those 300,000 pre-reversal of Roe abortions. Only 24,000, not 300,000, not 200,000, not 100,000, but 24,000. Well, what went wrong? What can we do about it? And that's what I hope to tell you. First, the world has changed. The pre-Roe environment is nothing like the post-Roe environment. In the post-Roe environment, we face enormous forces, many of which we did not face in 1973. First, and you will hear this recurring, is the radical Democrat prosecutors that have taken charge of many of our large urban centers and college towns. I mean, in 1973, there was no doubt that the Democrat prosecutor of Dallas, Texas, would and was enforcing their pro-life abortion law. Now, there are literally hundreds of radical Democrat prosecutors, many of which have already announced that they will not enforce any abortion law in their county. So in Indiana, we have a strong pro-life law passed right after Dobbs was handed down, and our Marion County prosecutor has announced that he will not enforce a single abortion law regarding abortion in Indianapolis. The result is, despite our state law, we have abortion on demand throughout pregnancy in Indiana because of the radical Democrat prosecutor in Marion County. And then, of course, the media is overwhelmingly, the mainstream media is overwhelmingly in favor of the on-demand. The cultural forces in the academy and universities in Hollywood are radically pro-abortion. Billionaires and millionaires are radically pro-abortion. It really has to do with this. Those billionaires and millionaires who are not Christian, their lifestyle depends on abortion. They they are used to being in charge and independent, and there's nothing that undermines their in charge and independence than their wife getting pregnant when they don't want it, or worse, their mistress or hookup getting pregnant when they don't want it. It threatens their lifestyle, and they are overwhelmingly in favor of abortion on demand. And then, of course, we have the woke corporations, governments, state governments, the federal government under the Biden administration, who are doing everything they possibly can do to support abortion on demand. And then we have a vast network of abortion clinics throughout the United States. So the pro-abortion movement has huge financial, I would say, 1,000 times the financial resources we have, and ideological support that goes way beyond the support for abortion prior to Roe v. Wade. And then there are chemical abortions. Some, not 30%, are of the abortions performed prior to Roe v. Wade being overturned. Some 30% were chemical abortions. Through the and now through the Biden administration's efforts, those abortion-inducing drugs can be mailed to any woman that requests it, and without doctor's supervision, and that's perfectly legal, so that we literally have abortion on demand throughout pregnancy in the vast majority of states with pro-life laws. Now, of course, the problem, life laws that were adopted as trigger laws, restoring prior to Roe v. Wade laws, is that they do nothing about the problem of radical Democrat prosecutors creating abortion havens in their pro-life states. They do nothing about, because they rely only on criminal penalties. They do nothing about chemical abortions or trafficking, women being trafficked for illegal abortions outside the state. And to deal with these problems, there is much more that we need to do. So, third is the fact that the support for the pro-life position has completely collapsed within the Democrat Party. The Democrat Party has been taken over by the radical extremists in the abortion movement that do not believe that any limitation or restriction on abortion can ever be imposed by the government, and wanting abortion on demand throughout pregnancy to the moment of birth. And many say, if a child survives an abortion, that baby should die also by neglect. You could look at when the Obamacare was being proposed in the Obama administration, when the question of not funding abortion under Obamacare, 64 Democrat members of the House of Representatives voted in favor of that. The last time a vote occurred in Congress on limiting abortion funding by the federal government, one Democrat congressman voted in favor of that law. So how do we deal with all these challenges? What kind of and I'm going to deal with what kind of laws would be necessary in order to actually have laws that significantly restrict abortion. Well, there's three aspects to that. The first aspect is substantive, the substantive provisions of the law. The second is dealing with specific problems that I've already identified. And third is effective enforcement mechanisms. So first, let's start with the substance. What sort of exceptions will be necessary and are necessary now in order to adopt effective abortion protection for the unborn from abortion? Well, let's start first with the polling. I mean, what in a democracy, politics is the art of the possible, and it's not an encyclical. It's the art of the possible, and laws need popular support. Well, what's the support for limiting abortion only to the life of the mother in the United States? 10%. 10% of the citizens of the United States want to limit abortion to life of the mother only. An interesting poll was also done in Oklahoma on the same question. And Oklahoma is known to be a very pro-life state. And the support for life of the mother only in Oklahoma was 4%. You cannot pass laws that do not have popular support, and that 10% and 4% is the opposite of popular support. Well, what about life of the mother, rape with safeguards, incest with safeguards, and a medical emergency? What do you think is the popular support for such a law? 70% of the American people would support limiting abortion to life of the mother, rape with safeguards, incest with safeguards, and medical emergency. Well, that is popular support for our measures. And look, we've got to have 70% support in order to do the other work, which is dealing with specific problems and having effective enforcement mechanisms. And the reality is, it's with the Republicans. We have to have the support of the Republican caucus in any state to do anything. And the reality is, if you force the Republicans to vote on rape and incest, you are forcing them in their mind to walk the plank. Vote, and either way they vote is going to be a big problem for them, and they won't tolerate that. And I understand why they wouldn't. We should never make our politicians walk any plank. They are our allies. They are the means through which we get things done. We need them on our side. And when we're talking about effective abortion laws, we need them on our side not only for the reasons for abortion, but to deal with these specific problems and have effective enforcement mechanisms, which I will discuss next. And you know what the wonderful news is about an abortion law with effective enforcement mechanisms that permits abortion for the life of the mother, rape, incest, and medical emergency is that we will have eliminated 95% of the abortions that occurred prior to Roe v. Wade. It permits only 5%. Now, what about gestational bans? National Right to Life is totally opposed to gestational bans. We have opposed those prior to Roe v. Wade. We opposed them during Roe v. Wade's regime, and we oppose them now. Because the reality of gestational bans is that they don't protect the unborn. If you have a gestational ban of 15 weeks, let's say, and we've had politicians supporting gestational bans, and one of the bans that has been proposed federally, which National Right to Life opposes, is a 15-week ban. And you know why? Guess how many abortions would be prohibited by a 15-week ban? 4% of the Roe v. Wade abortions during Roe v. Wade, 4% were done after 15 weeks. Our goal is to protect as many lives as we possibly can, and a 15-week ban only protects 4%. Well, what about a 12-week ban? First trimester ban. Well, the problem there is that it protects only 30% of the babies that would otherwise be aborted, leaving 70% to be aborted. Well, what about a 6-week ban? The fetal heartbeat ban. Well, it would protect 50% of the unborn from abortions, because 50% of the abortions occur before the fetal heartbeat. But if we not use these gestational bans, but go to the reasons why people get abortions, if we had a law that allowed for only abortions for life of the mother, rape, incest, and medical emergency, we would protect 95% of the babies from abortion. So not gestational bans, reason bans, and we have got to accept that we would be proposing laws that protect the unborn, except to save the life of the mother, rape with safeguards, incest with safeguards, and medical emergencies. That's the reality of where we are now, 50 years after Roe v. Wade. That's the position we're in, and we need their help, and we need the help of Republican legislatures and the general public to pass these laws, because we also need in these laws to deal with specific problems. There are three that I want to mention. The first, of course, is the trafficking of women outside of your state to have an abortion that would otherwise be illegal in your state. Well, we got to have a provision on that deals with people that traffic minors, where the parents are not informed to go to out of state to get an illegal abortion, and to protect women also from that. Secondly is abortion-inducing drugs. We have to have specific provisions that prevent the trafficking of abortion-inducing drugs in your state. And of course, the final thing is we have got to do something with these radical Democrat prosecutors who are creating abortion on demand in every state that I know of, and including those with significant pro-life laws. So what is the effective enforcement mechanism that gets around the problem of criminal penalties only, quote, enforced, meaning not enforced by prosecutors in counties throughout the nation? Well, the first is you got to deal with those people. That can either be, for instance, giving enforcement authority to an attorney general when a prosecutor is not enforcing abortion laws. It could be removing them. In Florida, Ron DeSantis as governor, has removed 2 radical Democrat prosecutors in his state that are refusing to enforce abortion and other laws. There's a provision of Florida law that allows that, and your state can have one of those as well. We should, of course, remove the licenses of any physicians and others that are doing abortions or participating in abortions, but this is a very, very weak enforcement mechanism. We need, therefore, also civil remedies where the victims of abortion, it might be the father of the child or the woman herself, can bring actions for damages and injunctions and to protect and to stop these illegal abortions. And the final thing is we need to recognize that we are facing what is comparable to what the law has faced with organized crime. We have an organized enterprise to engage in these illegal abortions. And so we need a RICO-like law that has been used against the mafia very effectively because it attacks the enterprise. For instance, you have an illegal abortion clinic operating. Well, throwing this doctor or that nurse in jail for participating in illegal abortions will, punish them. And it may take them off the line. But just like the mafia, that didn't shut them down. There's always somebody else to take their place, and the enterprise goes forward. You need a RICO law that will seize the bank account of that clinic, will seize all of their equipment, will shut them down and enjoin them and the owners and operators from operating them again. It's only through that I think we will ultimately be successful in shutting down the abortion enterprise. Now, National Right to Life has proposed a model law. It's available on our website of National Right to Life that incorporates all of these different functions and provisions. Now, I want to talk about an alternative that has been proposed, and that this has been, there's been people who are attracted to this over the years and have thought that it is a remedy for the problems we face. And I can just tell you my opinion, it is not. And that is to recognize the personhood of the unborn. Now, those of you who are Catholic understand that the moral concept of personhood is extremely important in the value system that people who are Catholics, including me, believe that is one of the reasons that we should protecting the unborn under the law. But as a legal concept, it has little utility. And let me explain to you why. First, before I do that, one of the things that you often hear from people who support the idea of personhood is that they cite in Roe v. Wade, where Justice Blackmun said, well, the unborn was a 14th Amendment person, obviously the Texas law would be upheld. I think it's ironic that people are citing Blackmun actually believing that he actually believed that and thought that that would be the case, when we don't believe anything else he said. And so I don't, rely on Justice Blackmun to tell me what the law is. I take a look at it realistically to see would restoring, which I think it should be restored by a constitutional amendment, but restoring personhood to the unborn actually limit abortions to the rare instances that we otherwise support. Well, to figure that question out, we can look to the 14th Amendment. What does it say? It says that the pertinent part, nor shall any state deprive any person of life, liberty, or property without due process of law, nor deny to any person within his jurisdiction the equal protection of the law. So if we restored personhood to the unborn under the Constitution, a state may not deprive that person, that unborn child, of life, liberty, or property without due process of law, nor deny any person within its jurisdiction and the equal protection of the law. Now, what we can see readily is that this is incorporating two very broad, but very general and very high level principles to the law. And that is, what is due process of law and what is equal protection of the law. And the problem with those very broad, very vague, and very high level of generality principles is that we don't know what they mean. And we have literally thousands of cases and they're litigated in federal courts over the question of what is due process of law that is provided to a person in a particular instance, and what is equal protection of the law provided to a person in their situation. And so, and as a result, it is judges that decide what equal protection and due process law, not the people, but judges are deciding the applications of these very broad concepts. But we can also answer the question by asking this one. Did the 14th Amendment abolish slavery? I mean, people are proposing that the 14th Amendment personhood abolishes abortion. Well, obviously, in 1869, the 14th Amendment was proposed as a package of measures, three amendments actually, to abolish slavery. So the question is, did they think that the 14th Amendment abolished slavery? And the answer is no, they didn't think that. And they were sufficiently concerned about that they passed the 13th Amendment. And what did the 13th Amendment say? Neither slavery nor involuntary servitude, except as a punishment of crime, shall exist within the United States. Well, that's very specific, isn't it? It tells exactly what they want to have accomplished, the abolishment of slavery and involuntary servitude. And it permitted the sole exception that they wanted to allow. So they didn't rely on the 14th Amendment to abolish slavery. They relied on the 13th Amendment to abolish slavery. It is very specific. It says exactly what they want to accomplish. Then they weren't relying on this broad generalities contained in the 14th Amendment. Well, we have to understand they understood of the 13th Amendment abolishing slavery in order to accomplish that. And similarly, we have to understand that if we want to abolish abortion and specify the only reasons that it shall occur, then we have to do that in law. Personhood does not accomplish that. So my recommendation is that we pass specific laws, and in order to have the laws that we need to deal with the challenges we face now, that we have to go way beyond criminal penalties, and to accomplish the passage of the laws, we have to have a popular measure that which has the exceptions, the very narrow exceptions that the public is willing to support, some 70%, which will eliminate 95% of the abortions. I'm very pleased to answer any questions that you all might have. And I gather Myra will be asking me those out of the chat.
Yes, I will keep an eye on the chat. My first question, and first of all, thank you. Thank you so much. That I have to admit, I heard you present some similar arguments and summary points this summer at the National Right to Life Convention, and hearing it a second time is just as powerful, because everything you outlined makes perfect sense. And if we as a movement can sort of crystallize those different points and convey them as effectively as you do, we might be in a different landscape in the not so distant future. So thank you for sharing those insights. So my question is, just looking at a state like Massachusetts, can you compare any other blue states in terms of what they are doing, what laws they are passing and enforcing? Is there a blue state that we should look to start emulating some of our efforts? Because right now here it's very bleak some days seem very bleak. And so is there a state that we could start to model ourselves after?
Not that I'm aware of. What the blue
Oh, come
states
on,
are
Jim.
doing, what the blue states are doing are two things. They are repealing all of their legal protections for the unborn so that they have literally in law abortion on demand throughout pregnancy. They are repealing bans on partial birth abortion. They're repealing parental notice. They're repealing informed consent. They're repealing conscience clauses. They're repealing limits on abortion funding. As soon as they get in office, I mean, the reality is there are just simply no pro-life Democrats left, and they have embraced the most radical pro-abortion agenda imaginable, which has been, their goal for, way before Roe v. Wade, and now because of the radical takeover of the Democrat Party, they are able to implement those in their states. Now, of course, and they want to do that on the most permanent level they can think of. So they are proposing amendments to state constitutions, that incorporate this radical agenda. They're adopting state laws that, say this, say these things, that there shall be no limits on abortion at all. And so it's, I mean, that's the reality of this. Now, obviously, state, may be blue, but they still elect people to Congress. Republicans to Congress, Republicans even occasionally to the Senate, and of course that's going to be vital to our upcoming, our ability to affect the legislation on the federal level, because ultimately we're going to need the federal government on our side. We're going to need them not funding abortion, not facilitating abortion, as the Biden administration, just like some of these blue states, they're the most radical. They've adopted the most radical policies imaginable, and of course, like like the community organizers, they all read Saul Alinsky's Rules for Radicals, and you'll see the playbook of the modern Democrat Party. They don't care what the law says. They don't care whether they have the legal authority under the laws of the United States. They have agencies who are just running around adopting regulations and getting it. Many are struck down, but you try to argue with them. Well, that isn't authorized. They don't care. They say we have the power. And we're going to pursue our policies. So we're in a very, difficult and radical time, frankly. What blue states can do is some of them can elect, members to the Congress. So in the right circumstances, some of them might even vote for a president. But we will need the Congress and the president to do things that are within the realm of the federal government, like enforce the Comstock law. I mean, we already have a law that prohibits, through criminal penalties, mailing abortion drugs, state to state. Well, the Biden administration said they're not going to enforce those laws. Okay, that we need proper regulation of abortion-inducing drugs, to eliminate their use and in states where they're protecting the unborn from chemical abortions. And of course we can't, we've got to make sure that we have no federal funding. I mean, the Biden administration is turning Veterans Administration hospitals into abortion clinics. Is that sufficiently absurd? But again, they believe they have the power. They do, in a sense, raw power. Whether it's legal or not, they don't care, and they are using every lever that is available to them.
We have question from one of our audience members who asks, what are examples of the safeguards that you referenced earlier, which would be applicable to exceptions like rape and incest?
The most important safeguard is proper reporting, right? And that is any rape or any incidents of incest reported to law enforcement authorities in order to protect these women and punish the people who committed these horrendous crimes. What that guarantees and seeks to guarantee is one, that these women, these victims of these terrible crimes, will not be turned back over to the perpetrator. I mean, a woman, a girl comes for an abortion in an abortion clinic. Let's say, who brought her there? Was it the perpetrator to cover up the crime? Are you just going to perform the abortion and turn her right over to the perpetrator who drives her back, to the house where she lives and he lives, to perpetuate these horrible crimes? So it triggers enforcement, okay, for that will investigate this crime and go after the perpetrators. It also means that it will not be a readily available loophole, because it is a crime itself to falsely report to the police. So, and police, as a lot of people have found out, they don't like false reports to be given to them. And, so it provides, that minimal level of protection that when the crime is claimed, that it is truthful, because you have to report it to police, and it is a crime to lie to the police on one of these reports. So I think that is sufficient. All right. Now, we also have laws that have to be enforced, that require healthcare providers to report instances of child abuse, which this would be, and raping a child, or having incest with a child, and so that also kicks in, and you have to make sure that does, so that you can make sure that these women and girls are protected.
Good, thank you. I am wondering where we could find good resources to really learn a little bit about what you've spoken about tonight, and just to sort of prepare ourselves and really to educate ourselves in terms of these kinds of strategies going forward.
Well, certainly there are resources available at National Right to Life. We have a state legislative director who helps with state legislation, and as a result has access to a lot of the backup that is beneficial. We also have an education department that does a lot of research on issues like this, and National Right to Life has prepared a lot of educational material. That's where I'd start first. Many of those things are available on National Right to Life's website, but you can also contact them.
Great. Very good. Any last questions for Jim before we wrap up our event tonight? Okay, I don't see any. So thank you.
And by the way, politics is not permanent. I mean, states that, at one time, reflect a certain complexion, at other times they change. Demographics change, people's views on issues change, political parties change. I mean, the Democrat Party is rushing like lemmings to the cliff, and to jump over the cliff, and there are many Democrats that have walked away. And so, we pray for you. We pray for your efforts and remarkably successful efforts as an organization in a state with so many challenges. And we admire that tremendously and appreciate your work, and you are saving lives even in the most difficult situations. So God bless you.
Thank you. We appreciate hearing that, and it does a lot for us. And I thank you once again for your leadership, for your work, and for your resolve. And you're a great example for the rest of us to look to stay the course and fight the good fight through to the end. So thank you, Jim Bopp, for joining us this evening. Take care.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Okay. And thanks to everyone for joining us tonight. We hope to see you at the gala on October 14th. But for now, enjoy the rest of your evening, and thank you so much for joining us this evening. Take care.